Good Tag. The Rebbe Zalman began the Farbrengen this afternoon that today is Parshas Yisro, which means it's the Sedre of Matan Torah. This is a major part of today's Sedre which we read this morning. And we all know the famous expression of the Alter Rebbe, Medaf leben mit der Zeit, that we have to live with the times, and it's interpreted that it means Parshas HaShavua. And when we say live with the times, it means that it should affect into the Gashmiistic life the lesson which we will take with us from Parshas HaShavua and bring it down into day-to-day life. And this is something which we carry with us for the entire year, for the entire years to come. Based on the expression in the Zohar, Shabbos gives bracha into the entire week. And when it comes the next Shabbos again gives bracha to the entire week. But nonetheless, this does not diminish the bracha which is coming from the previous week. The only thing we are gaining more bracha. So the Mela, just like the bracha from Shabbos, is something which we carry with us constantly. Same thing, the lesson which we derive from the contents of the Sedre, and specifically this week, the Sedre of this week is relating to Parshas HaShavua, is something which we carry with us not only for the day of the Kriya, not only for the Shabbos, but it's something which we have to bring and introduce into our daily lives on a permanent basis. Regarding the Aseres HaDibros, it is known, what Chassidus asks, that obviously the contents of the Aseres HaDibros are inyonim which are very simple, and simple to the extent that even prior to Matan Torah, most of these things were committed. True, it was not committed as part of Torah, but nonetheless, those that lived a proper life prior to Matan Torah, a life of L'Sheves Yitzhara, a life of upkeeping this world and inhabiting the world, and making sure that everything in this world is on a proper way. So when we're talking about the inyonim that are discussed in Aseres HaDibros, they definitely adhered to these inyonim. And this is what Chassidus asks, and it's explained in length in Chassidus, that we make such a tremendous issue and such big introduction, and so many things happened prior to Matan Torah, or preparing Yidden to Matan Torah. And when we look at the contents of the Aseres HaDibros, it seems to be inyonim that are so obvious to the extent that even prior to Matan Torah they were also fulfilled. And the Rebbe led into the very first of the Aseres HaDibros. The very first of the Aseres HaDibros is Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, and as the pasuk goes on, Asher Hitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. And here too it's known the discussion in Chassidus and in other Mefarshei HaTorah. Why is it that the Torah chose, the Rebbe has chosen to refer to Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Hitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. I am God, thy God that has taken you out of Mitzrayim. Obviously the Rebbe could have said something perhaps of greater meaning. Anoichi Hashem Elokecha asher barasi shamayim v'aretz. That He's God, the Almighty God, that has created the entire world. Nonetheless, we see that the Torah does not do that. As it can be explained, because the Rebbe is not looking to identify himself, who he is, in a means of identification. Rebbe says, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, so he will identify himself, who is Hashem Elokecha, and he will say, you can know me by the fact that I am the one that created the world. The Rebbe is out to bring out the shaykhs, the relation that he has to each and every Yid. So first of all, Bria Shamayim Va'aretz, the creation of the world, is not something specifically to Yid, it's to everyone in the world. The Rebbe is trying to bring out his closeness to Yidden. The closeness to Yidden is stressed by the fact of Asher Hitzisicha me'eretz Mitzrayim. Furthermore, why did the Rebbe take us out of Mitzrayim? The whole taking us out of Mitzrayim was so that B'yitziachasam in Mitzrayim, as the pasuk says, Tavdun es Elokim ala harazeh, so that when we go out of Mitzrayim, we should be able to serve the Rebbe at Har Sinai. So that is why the Torah stresses, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, Asher Yitzei Sicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, because this is what led to it that Yidden should serve the Rebishter, the Farbrengen, the relationship between Yidden and the Rebishter. This comes as an outcome, as a result of Yitzei Sicha Me'eretz Mitzrayim, of the fact that the Rebishter took us out of Mitzrayim. And then the pasuk continues regarding Matan Torah. Pasuk says, "Vayidaber Elokim es kol advarim ha'ela leimer." The Rebbe spoke all of this leimer. So there's a famous question which the Alter Rebbe asks: when is the expression leimer used in the Torah? That is when the Rebbe is speaking to Moshe, or he's speaking to Moshe and Aaron, and he's telling them something they should repeat to Bnei Yisrael. Leimer is an expression you shall relate what I'm telling you now, leimer, to repeat to Yidden. By Matan Torah, however, everybody was present. All the neshamas were there, the neshamas of that time as well as neshamas of future generations. Everybody was present by Matan Torah. The question arises, how does the word leimer fit in? And nonetheless, the Torah does use it. Pasuk should have omitted the word leimer. The Rebbe spoke all these words, and he spoke it to whom? The Rebbe addressed each and every Yid. As we know, it's stressed and explained in the Sfarim. The Rebbe spoke everything Loshen Yochid, in singular expression. Addressed himself to each and every Yid. So why is there a leimer? Now the Rebbe brings out that the leimer is for later generations. That at any time later, when a Yid will learn Torah, and any Yid, the most simple Jew, even a child, will learn Torah at any time and at any place, he will have a response from the Rebishter. As the expression goes, ke'oine achar hakoire, just like one that answers to somebody that calls him. The same way, the Rebishter will learn Kaviyachol. The Rebishter will respond to anybody who will be learning Torah at any time. And this is the leimer. The leimer is not for then. The leimer is for later generations. Leimer meaning there will be a repeat. What's the pshat to repeat? Leimer, we said, is always used when the contents is repeated, but not like usual. The Rebbe is telling a mitzvah to Moshe Rabbeinu is repeating it to the Yidden. Here Yidden later are learning, and there's a repeat from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Rebbe is responding to the call of the Yid who is learning Torah. Here the Rebbe continued into the beginning of the Rambam. The Rambam begins, the foundation of all foundations, and the pillar of all wisdom, is to know of the existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that from the Rebishter, everything else that is created in this world is all coming from Hashem. Then the Rambam continues. And if somebody will have any kind of thought, that there's, as we learned, a simple meaning, that the Rebishter is not in existence, so shalom, then nothing else can be in existence. How can anything exist? Everything can only exist through the Rebishter. The Rebbe is asking, learning Rambam, learning Torah, the Rambam is bringing out how the Yisod is the foundation of all foundations and the pillar of all wisdom, is to know that everything in this world is existing from the Rebishter. So what does he say afterward? The Rambam is saying it, Torah is saying it. Im Yalal Adas, in case he will have a thought, She'einei Motzui, that he's not in existence, then there is nothing else in existence. How can we have such a thought? And according to Torah, start a bit high. The Rambam is definitely talking everything al pi Torah. Has v'shalom. Rambam does not have in mind somebody that will think the Rebishter Zeinei Motzi. The word from the Rambam is im Yalal Adas. What's the pshat Yalal Adas? It will come on our mind. So Rebbe is teaching Yala Ladas, a person will have an elevation in his mind. He's reaching to a higher madrege. He's reaching to a higher madrege, and he's realizing that the Rebishter is Einoi Motzui, that the Rebishter is above the realm of Metzias, above the realm of our grasping him. That's the Taich Yala Ladas Einoi Motzui. It's a completely different Taich. If it will come to our mind, in other words, we will have an elevation in our mind. We will have an elevation in our mind that the Rebishter is above any type of Metzias. The Rebishter is above any type of anything which we can grasp in our minds. And das idachazoi, this is take. So, in fact, that's why the Rambam, every word in the Rambam is accurate. He uses the expression Yala Ladas. It's an aliyah in the das to come to such kind of a recognition excuse me, that the Rebishter is Einoi Motzui, the Rebishter is above any type of Metzias. And therefore, what does this lead back to the Hira of Matan Torah? The Hira of Matan Torah is how the message of Anoichi Hashem Elokecha. Anoichi, as we know, Anoichi is the highest way of definition of the Rebishter, above any type of a name or any type of Anoichi. As we all know, the law is Rames, the loy b'shum ois v'loy b'shum koitz, expression from the Zohar. It's higher than a name. The Rebbe has many names. However, all the names, titles of HaKadosh Baruch Hu refer to him. Shem Elokim is one type of a description of the Rebbe. Shem Havai is another description of the Rebbe. Anoichi meaning the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And this essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is what the Rebbe gave away into Torah. And by giving this into Torah, this is how he's giving himself away to you. Rabbi brought out, there's a Chazal that tells us, Alpayim Shana Kodma Torah Lo'elam, that Torah is 2,000 years before the world. So again, this shows Torah is like a prior to world, but at the same time, there is a shaykhis, there is a kesher between Torah and Welt. This level in Torah, which the Rebishter is giving us by Matan Torah, this is a much higher level than the level of Torah which we say was created 2,000 years before the world creation. This is the level of Atzmus Ein Sof Baruch Hu. Anoichi. The level of Anoichi, this is what the Rebishter is putting into Torah. And by us learning the simple matters in Torah, we are having, we spoke earlier, obviously, all the inyanim in the Aseret HaDibros are inyanim that are so simple. And by us learning these simple matters, by this we are becoming associated with the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the essence of a Yid, because the pshitis, it's the simplicity in every Yid, the essence of every Yid. This is what takes the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and how is this taken? Through these inyanim and Torah. And from Pashas Yisro, we continue further into Pashas Mishpatim. And Pashas Mishpatim, again, we have all the details of all the dinim. The dinim asher tosim lefneim. Here we come to the level of the completion of the Aseret HaDibros. It isn't only in Aseret HaDibros, but it comes down into all detailed matters, all detailed inyanim and Torah. But all of it originates from the Aseret HaDibros. Eser is a number of 10, is a complete cycle. Eser, it's always brought out and see this, reflects to brings out an Indian, a shleimus, a completeness, because in a complete cycle we have when we reach the number 10. And it is through the fulfillment of the Aseret HaDibros, which this is actually the key to the entire Torah, because this leads into all other matters of Torah. Here we will come to this will lead to other inyanim of Eser, the inyanim of Eser, the 10th Paraduma, which we will have when Mashiach will come, as well as the 10th song. There are 9 shiras in the Torah. The 10th one will be when Mashiach will come. This corresponds to what we say, Oz Yoshir Moshe. And this is an indication that not only did Moshe sing in the past, because if it would have been referring only to Moshe singing in the past, then the Pasuk should have said, Oz Shor Moshe. The Pasuk says, Yoshir Loshni Osid, means past as well as future. This will be the Shira Asiris, the 10th Shira, which will be forthcoming when Mashiach will come. Here the Rebbe is continuing. We're talking about entering into Pashas Mishpatim, which this comes as a continuation of Yisro, where something so fundamental was given, the Aseret HaDibros. What does Mishpatim begin with? And then the Torah goes on and has to be placed properly, as Rashi brings on behalf of Chazal. Torah has to be related, clear, should be clear and precise, just like a set table, the same way we have to relate in Yonim and Torah. And then the Torah continues with what?
Ki sikna eved ivri. If a person goes ahead and buys and acquires a Jewish slave, Torah tells us exactly all the details how we are to treat him. This is something very strange. We are just leaving Matan Torah. We're going into Pashas Mishpatim. We're starting to learn the details of the halachas of Torah, the details of the dinim and Torah. What does the Torah talk about? A case. Person is going to be Jewish person. Who is going to steal? Why is he becoming a slave? Because he stole. And he does not have the money to pay. He was caught. And he doesn't have the money to pay what he stole. So therefore he has no other alternative, but he's forced to sell himself as a slave, as a servant. And these funds will cover for the gneva for what he has stolen. Something so remote, something so unusual. And this is the first of Mishpatim, which the Torah talks about when we are leaving Pashas Yisro and going away right after Kabbalas HaTorah, right after hearing the Aseres HaDibros. We are going into Pashas Mishpatim, which we began to read today to Mincha. We are learning what is the very first detail of Mishpatim, such an unusual case which the Torah describes about an Eved. So Rabbi brings out, the Torah is continuing to tell us what is the Avodah for each and every Yid. Each and every Yid is an Eved. We are all Avodim. Whom to? To the Rabbeinu Shalom. So we are told that we have to serve the Rebishter in a position of an Eved Ivri. The Taich Eved Ivri. Normally, with Taich it means a Yid. Where do we find the word Ivri? We find it by Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu was called Avram HaIvri. Why was he called Avram HaIvri? So Chazal tell us. Chazal tell us that Avraham Avinu was so strong in his commitment to the Rebishter
that the whole world will be on one side, and he would be me'aver on the other side. Nonetheless, he did not let himself be influenced by anybody else, but he stuck to his commitment to the Rebishter. So what does Ivri really mean? Ivri means we go against anybody, we go against everybody. We know that we have to do the right thing. And this is what the Torah is telling us right at the beginning of Parshas Mishpat. Right after we are leaving Parshas Yisro. A Yid has to know that his avodah to the Eibishter is in what way? In a way of an Eved Ivri. We are all avodim to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shtori koidem, as the Eibishter said, I am the one that has the first mortgage on you. Our first obligation we have to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we have to know that our obligation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in what type of a way? Ivri. Just like Avram HaIvri. Just like Avram HaIvri went against everybody and did not let himself be influenced by them. But he held out on his commitment to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Zelbe Zach is required from each and every Yid that our Avodas Hashem should be in a way of Ivri. Let everybody be on one side of the Nahar, everybody on one side of the river. We are on the other side, holding out in our Zugebildenkeit to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Rebbe continued, there's a famous expression that all the details in Torah, even the Seder in Torah, the sequence, the way Inyanim are discussed in Torah, is also accurate. Regarding Matan Torah, we find the Torah uses the expression Koi Seimar Lebeis Yaakov V'Saged Lebnei Yisrael, that the Rebbe is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, first you should talk to the Beis Yaakov, and Chazal interpret what's meant Beis Yaakov Elo Hanoshim, this means women, and then you will go ahead and relate the message to the men. And also we note, Rashi brings on behalf of Chazal, that when the Rebbe is telling him to talk to the women, he's using the expression of Soimar, Amira, as opposed to when he's talking to the men, it's Saged Lebnei Yisrael. And what is the difference? Amira is a Lashon Rako, it's a Lashon of softness. And the Rebbe is telling him when he's talking to the women, he should talk to them in a soft expression, as opposed to when he's talking to the men, he can permit himself to use a stronger expression more. Talk stronger. This also has a lesson. And we know that Matan Torah is something which we go through every day. Nice in our Torah we say, Lashon Hoive, the Rebbe is presently giving the Torah constantly again. Especially as mentioned earlier, that Matan Torah is something which comes in, as a continuation of Yitzias Mitzrayim. And regarding Yitzias Mitzrayim, we know that every day we have to visualize as we are going out of Mitzrayim again. Excuse me. So the same thing, when we're talking about Matan Torah, it's something which we are experiencing daily. So the Rebbe explained to Chassidus that within every person there are two madrigas. There's the ish in him, there's the male in him, and the female within him. Which is explained in Chassidus, these are various levels in Avodas Hashem. What do we have to know? What we have to know is how to serve the Rebishter. That first comes serving the Rebishter in the level of Isha, and then comes the Vesagid L'Bnei Yisro. Later in the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke at length how in later generations, more close generations to us, the entire chinuch of the Jewish woman has changed. As I've expressed himself, generations ago, Jewish daughter would get her chinuch either from her grandmother, or from her mother, or from her older sisters. And as generations went on, primarily in the middle of the time of the Nesius, of the leadership of the Frierdiker Rebbe, there was a major change made in the entire approach of Chinuch Habonis. And Chinuch Habonis now is with a complete school system, a system of Beis Rivka or other similar systems, and this system is based on giving a complete schooling to the Jewish daughter, something which was totally strange generations ago. Generations ago there was only a concept of house of education for a boy, for a son. However, the daughter did not have a house of education, but now generations and the later generations, especially closer to our generation, and in our generation, this is something which is of equal and of vital importance, the house of education for a Jewish daughter, as well as the house of education for a son. In fact, the Rebbe brought out that we see the success of women in being mekaref people to Yiddishkeit at times is even bigger than the success of men. And when women are mekaref people to Yiddishkeit, it's usually done with a special warmth and with a special simcha and with a special dedication, which men don't even give that when they are going out to be mekaref Yidden to Yiddishkeit. And this is something very special. Rebbe said that they are orchim, they are guests here, and it's customary always that we remind that the guests should be given l'chaim and should be greeted properly, as we know the greatness of achnosas orchem. Chazal tell us gdoila achnosas orchem is yet greater than kabbalas pnei hashchina, and especially we can fulfill this mitzvah in this place, which is a house of tefillah, a house of Torah, and a house of gemilas chsadim. Rebbe says he's mentioning about it every Shabbos, but really there's no need to mention about it. This is something which is self-understood. His expression goes, a mizarzin ela lemizurozin. Whom do we rush into something? Whom do we caution about something? The one who is already cautioned. So in other words, we all know about it, but nonetheless, we're reminding again, especially this year, that we're at a position of Shnas HaArboim. Shnas HaArboim is, the Torah tells us, we were given in Shnas HaArboim leiv lodas v'einayim lihois v'aznayim lishmoya. We were given this uplifting, and this corresponds to Matan Torah, because by Matan Torah we also find emphasis on the Indian of Shmiya and on the Indian of Riyah. As Chazal tell us, what happened by Matan Torah was Royen es ha-nishma v'sheimen es ha-nira. So we see how these chushim, these talents of hearing and seeing were put into a very special use by Matan Torah. So this corresponds to the elevation of our hearing and our seeing and our leiv ladas, which we all received in the Indian of, at the time of Shnas HaArboim, which we are in right now. Also related very warmly to the Convention of Women, which is taking place here during this weekend. And the Chalala Convention is something which is very, very worthy. Chazal tell us that a kinus of tzaddikim is hanoah lohem v'hanoah lo'olam. It brings hanoah, it brings pleasure to all those who participate. as well as to those, to the entire world, especially such type of a convention which brings proper results. And this convention, not only does it bring proper results, but there are also publications which were published in conjunction with it. And we know that publication is something very meaningful. There's an expression from the Tzemach Tzedek that when something is printed, it remains eternal. So Mamela, when we have some good things which were printed in conjunction with this convention that's taking place, so everything will definitely everything will definitely bring proper and fruitful results, until all this will lead to the Kitzu Veranenu Sheikh Ne'afa, that all the Sheikh Ne'afa will rise in Tchiyas HaMeisim, starting from the Baal Shem Tov, the Maggid of Mizrich, and all other later Nesiim will all rise in Tchiyas HaMeisim. The Rebbe referred to today's Shir and Rambam. In today's Shir and Rambam, for those who are learning 3 Prakim a day, we finish the halachas of Soita. And there the Rambam discusses how a person should use proper influence in his house, and when he uses the proper influence, this will keep the house away from any type of problem. And then the Rambam quotes a pasuk. Pasuk goes, "V'yadata, you shall know, ki shalom ohalecha, your tent, your home is peace." And the very last words which the Rambam uses in this halacha is v'loi sechta, and you will not sin. We know that the Rambam is always careful in concluding something with good. You have this klal misayim b'toiv. We always try to finish. When we finish something, we finish with good. What does the Rambam finish with? The word sechta, chet. But nonetheless, he adds before this loy sechta. You shall not sin. The truth is, I've elaborated here at length, that when the Rambam writes loy sechta, not to sin, that means there is room to sin. There is room for an avera. And what are we accomplishing? Loy sechta, not sinning. So this is what this is called. This is the aveda of ishapcha. We are turning over. With this we can understand. Alter Rebbe writes in Tanya regarding the midah of the Beinani. Beinani is something desirable for every person. Every person should strive to be a Beinani. So the question arises, why shouldn't a person strive to be a tzaddik? Why only a Beinani? Especially there's a pasuk, v'amech kulam tzaddikim. So the Rebbe brings out the advantage in a Beinani is, a Beinani does not do any averos. Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya. A Beinani of Tanya, as we know. But a desire and a temptation to do an avera, he does have. But he's so powerful that he overcomes this desire and he does not sin. So Memela, there is something special in this. The fact that he has a desire to do an avera and controls it is a greater level than the one who does not have any desire to sin at all. Why? Because he's accomplishing something. He's accomplishing that though there was a desire to sin, there was an intent to sin, but nonetheless he can overcome this. And this is something which is very much appreciated by the Rebbe. Remember, we are saying here, loy sechta. There is room for chet. There could be an inyan of chet, an inyan of avera. And was sagen wir, loy sechta. Rebbe compares it. We find in Gemara, there's a famous pasuk, Eis lases Lashem, hefeiru terasecha. When it's a time to do something for the Rebbe, something of vital importance, then hefeiru terasecha, this can interfere with an inyan of Torah. Just to give an example, we should understand it properly. We shouldn't take it out of its context. When Rabbeinu HaKodesh, Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, felt that Torah would chas v'shalom be forgotten by Yidden. In those days there was a concept of Torah shebiksav, there was the written Torah, and there was the oral Torah. However, he realized that we are at a time where the generations are becoming weaker, and the oral Torah can be forgotten. Until now, this was only studied orally, it was not put into writing. He changed it and put oral Torah also into writing based on this concept. It's an eis lasis lashem. And when it's an eis lasis lashem, hey feiru terasecha, you can interfere even with an Indian of Torah, because you're saving something for the Rebbe. Like in this case, he saved Torah, because otherwise if Torah would remain only orally, it would be forgotten. So the Gemara brings this pasuk, this quotation of eis lasis lashem feiru terasecha, and the Gemara says, we cannot conclude with the words Hefeiru Terasecha, because it's not a siyum b'toyr. Hefeiru Terasecha means to go ahead and interfere with Torah. This is not considered we are completing with a good concept. It's not good, Hefeiru Terasecha. So there the Gemara switches around and says, Hefeiru Terasecha mishum eis lasis lashem. When it comes to an eis lasis lashem, we do Hefeiru Terasecha. So there we see the Gemara is interested that the theme, the conclusion should be with something good. That's why the Gemara concludes with the words eis lasis lashem. Here it's a much higher good, a much deeper good. Why? Loi sechata. There would be room for an inyan of chait. And what we are doing is, we are holding back the inyan of chait. Rabbi brought it. We find by Shlomo HaMelech, by Shlomo, Bathsheba expressed herself when we're talking about, discussing about Shlomo becoming a king. She used the expression, V'hoyisi aniu Shlomo b'ni chatoyim. It may come to it that me and my son Shlomo will be chatoyim, will be sinners. So Chassidus explains it doesn't really mean sin in the sense of sin. It means chet meloshen chsom, that we will be lacking something. So Rabbi asked, we're talking about Shlomo HaMelech. Shlomo HaMelech was the one who was chosen by the Rebbe to build the Beis HaMikdash. Shlomo Shmoi, his name was Shlomo, V'Shalom Yebiyamav, and in his time there was peace. Shlomo stems from the word Shalom, whole and complete. Same thing we're talking about is Mother Bathsheba. Rabbi says, why was she called Bathsheba? Rabbi says, it's important for him that there are 7 midos in a person. She has completed and elevated all her 7 midos. And that is why she was called Bathsheba. So we're talking about people of such a caliber. How do we come to an inyan of chait? So here the explanation of this is, on the contrary, Datke, due to their greatness, they will accomplish that they will convert chait. They will take an inyan of chait and make loy sechata, not to sin on the inyan of chait. Just like we are discussing now, there is room for chait, and nonetheless, one is holding himself back from chait. This is something which is much more admirable. This is a yet higher madrege. Having a shaykhis to an inyan of chait, and controlling himself and staying away from it, this is a yet higher madrege. And this we find in the Rambam. What do we find regarding the Rambam? The name is Rambam, which is his name, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, his name and his father's name. Which this is also, Rebbe says, unusual. By many Gedolei Yisrael, we refer to them by their name, but not by their name and their father's name. The Rosh, one of the Rishonim, his name is Rabbeinu Asher. The Beis Yosef, we refer to him with his name, Rabbi Yosef Karo. We don't refer to him with his father's name. By the Rambam, we call him Rambam Rabbeinu Moshe ben Maimon, and at the same time, it also is an indication on the place where he lived, Mitzrayim. Rambam abbreviating Revois Moifsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim, which is a pasuk. Which means, the Rebbe says he will multiply his moifsim, he will increase his moifsim, his miracles in the land of Mitzrayim. What does this show us? It shows how the Rambam had an effect even on Mitzrayim. His avodah was to reach out in the inyan of Mitzrayim and to upgrade and to elevate Mitzrayim. This is this Shabbos Farbrengen. Because of a Yotzeit. The person whose Yotzeit it is had 2 names. First name was Chaya and the second name was Mushka. Chaya is from the word Chayas, life. And it's a Hebrew name. Mushka, however, is a Yiddish name. And we find by many people that had a name of a word in Hebrew and together with it a name in Yiddish. This is by the Friedrich Rebbe, we do not find it. However, by the Friedrich Rebbe, his name was Yosef Yitzchak, and Take lived up to his name. Yosef, as the Rebbe always teaches, Beloshen Hoisafa, Beloshen increasing. And just like we find by Yosef, his name was Yosef, as the Pasuk says, Yosef Hashem li bein acher. That the avodah is to reach out to the one who was an acher until now, and affect him, that he too, and awaken him, kindle him, that he too becomes, it is obvious in him too that he is a bein la'HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and this avodah should be done amidst Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Melashon Tzchok v'simcha, laughter and happiness. However, the Frierdiker Rebbe's father, his first name was Sholem Daiv, and together with it he had a name Ber, which is a word in Yiddish, it's not a Hebrew name, which is also a Shem Balad. In fact, even by the Tzemach Tzedek, we also find it. His first name was Menachem, Menachem equaling Tzemach, and his second name was Mendel, which is also a Yiddish name. The same we find by the person whose Yortzeit it is today. In other words, what the Rebbe is bringing out is that, actually by the Alter Rebbe we also find it, I don't think the Rebbe mentioned it, but Alter Rebbe was also, his first name was Shnei Yoyer, and then there was Zalman, which is a Shem Belaz. Belaz means Beloshen Amzor, in a different language other than Hebrew. Means that person with such a name, it's more stress the concept that what they are accomplishing is not only in the realm of Kodesh, in the realm of Kedusha, but also reaching out into Belaz, into Loshen Amzor, and also having an effect and having hashpah over there. Rabbi continued that in conjunction to the Yortzeit, it's definitely proper to increase with new institutions that will be involved, especially institutions that will be involved in the three mitzvahs that relate to women, which is Chale, Taras HaMishpacha, and Shabbos Licht, Ner Shabbos. And what would also be appropriate, in addition to the existing institutions and the new institutions which will be formed, that contributions of tzedakah should be made, and the contributions of tzedakah should be made in a multiple of the numeric value of the amount of the Balas HaYortzeit. And the numeric total of Chayim Mushke is 470. 470 gives us the word ace, a time. Ace lasois, it's a time to do. Rabbi says in Psukim Tanakh, which list 28 times itim, 28 times Eis Ladaber, Eis Lachshes, a time to speak, a time to be quiet. There are 28 times. We should be able to be successful in all the areas, in all the 28 itim, in all the 28 different times. Rabbi again concluded that all of this strength that we are getting from Pashas Yisro, and going from Pashas Yisro into Pashas Mishpatim, and from Pashas Mishpatim we go into Pashas Truma. And what is discussed in Pashas Truma? It is discussed about the Beis HaMikdash, about the Kodesh, the Mishkan, the Beis HaMikdash, and this is something which every Jew is really capable of erecting in his own home, to see to it that his own home becomes a holy place, a place that is worthy for the Shechina, and v'yikhu li Truma li lishmi, for the name, for the sake of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to see to it that our own homes and our own environment and our own areas become proper and suitable places that are worthy for the dwelling of the Shechina. And all of this, we gain the strength from this Seder, and all of this should be brought into action, into Poyel, into Achlotas Teves, good results, and all these good results should be brought down into reality.
Would you like, Mr. Frank?